I stood on the curb outside Westfield Mall, clutching a crumpled $10 bill while the autumn wind cut through my thin sweater. 3 hours I'd been waiting. 3 hours since Crystal, my daughter-in-law, said she'd moved the car closer. The mall was closing now, security guards ushering out the last stragglers. My phone was in her car. My wallet, too. She'd insisted on carrying both purses so I wouldn't have to lug them around. Now the parking lot was nearly empty, and she was gone. 40 miles from home with $10 to my name. The bus driver looked at me with something between pity and suspicion when I climbed aboard with shaking hands. $7.50 to get partway home. That's all I could afford. The fluorescent lights inside the bus were too bright, and I caught my reflection in the dark window. 63 years old, hair coming loose from its clip, mascara smudged. I looked exactly like what I was, abandoned. I'd been so stupid to trust her. Crystal had suggested this shopping trip 3 days ago, her voice sweet as honey over the phone. A bonding day, she'd called it. Just us girls. After 6 months of cold silences and barely concealed hostility, I jumped at the chance. My son Brian had married her 2 years ago, and I'd tried so hard to build a relationship with her. She was beautiful, educated, always perfectly put together, and she made Brian happy, or so I thought. We'd spent hours going from store to store. Crystal tried on clothes while I sat on uncomfortable benches, my feet aching in shoes I shouldn't have worn. She bought 3 shopping bags full of things, all charged to a credit card she said was a joint account with Brian. When I'd offered to buy lunch, she'd waved me off. "Don't be silly, Deborah. You're on a fixed income. Let us treat you." The bus lurched to a stop at the end of its route, still 15 miles from my house. The driver gestured toward the door. "End of the line, ma'am." I stepped off into the November darkness, the temperature dropping fast. My breath came out in white puffs. I walked for 30 minutes before I saw the convenience store, its neon sign flickering. My feet were bleeding inside my shoes. I needed to use the restroom, to sit down, to think. The bell dinged as I pushed through the door, and the clerk barely glanced up from his phone. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at myself in the spotted mirror. How had it come to this? My late husband Tom would have been horrified. He'd died 4 years ago, sudden heart attack at 59. Left me with the house, some savings, his life insurance. Enough to live on if I was careful. Brian was our only child, and after Tom died, Brian was all I had left. When I came out of the restroom, I had to walk past the lottery counter. "Powerball, 50, $3 million jackpot," the sign screamed. "Drawing tonight at 11. I had $2.50 left in my pocket. Enough for a ticket with $1 left over. Or enough for a phone call from a payphone, if I could find one that still worked. Something bitter and reckless rose up in me. I bought the ticket. The walk home took another 2 hours. My feet were destroyed, every step agony. I passed houses with warm lights in the windows, families sitting down to dinner. Finally, I turned onto my street, onto the driveway of the small ranch house Tom and I had bought 30 years ago. Brian's car wasn't there. Inside, I found a note on the kitchen table in Crystal's looping handwriting. Brian and I decided on a last-minute romantic getaway. Back next week. Have a great weekend. A little heart drawn at the bottom. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement that she'd left me stranded 40 miles from home with $10. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, too exhausted and hurt to even cry. Then I packed a bag and drove to my sister Margaret's house in the next town. I couldn't stay in my own home. Couldn't stand the silence and the memories of that note. Margaret's spare room became my refuge. She asked what happened, and I told her everything. She was outraged, wanted to call Brian immediately. I stopped her. "Let me think," I said. "Let me figure this out." For 6 days, I checked the lottery numbers obsessively. I'd hidden the ticket in my wallet, this small, stupid hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from the worst day of my life. On the 7th day, sitting at Margaret's kitchen table with my coffee, I pulled up the Powerball website. My hands started shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. I checked 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Every number matched. Every single one. I'd won $53 million. After taxes, about $31 million. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Margaret came running when she heard me gasping. Thought I was having a heart attack. When I showed her the ticket, when she checked the numbers herself, we both just sat there in shocked silence. My phone buzzed. A text from Crystal. "Stop being so dramatic, Deb. It was just a joke. You're always so sensitive. Brian and I thought it would be funny. Learn to laugh at yourself." A laughing emoji at the end. I stared at those words until they blurred. A joke. She thought abandoning me 40 miles from home was a joke. She thought taking my phone and wallet and leaving me with $10 was funny. That $10 had just won me $53 million. Margaret grabbed my hand. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to claim this ticket," I said. "And I'm not telling Brian or Crystal. Not yet. Maybe not ever." We went to the lottery office the next day. I set everything up through an anonymous trust, got a financial advisor, made arrangements to keep my name out of the papers. I could do that in my state if I acted fast and filed the right paperwork. The advisor, a sharp woman named Patricia, helped me set up accounts, invest most of it, keep it safe. I felt free for the first time in years. Free from worry about money. Free from feeling like a burden to my son. Free from Crystal's subtle and not so subtle jabs about my fixed income and my small house and my simple life. I started making plans. I'd move away, maybe to Arizona where it was warm. Start fresh. Get away from Crystal's toxicity. When I left the lottery office 3 hours later, documents signed and money safely transferred, I felt lighter than air. Margaret and I were walking to her car when I saw it. A silver Lexus parked across the street, engine running. Crystal's car. She was sitting in the driver's seat, staring right at me. Our eyes met across the distance. She smiled, slow and cold, and pulled out her phone. Raised it. Took a photo of me standing in front of the lottery headquarters, the building's name clearly visible behind me. Then she lowered the phone, gave me a little wave, and drove away. The lightness evaporated. Crystal knew. 2 days passed in tense silence. I waited for something to happen, for the other shoe to drop. Margaret kept asking if maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe Crystal had just been driving by. Maybe the photo was a coincidence. I knew better. On the 3rd day, Margaret and I were sitting in her living room when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Brian's car in the driveway. My heart clenched. Margaret squeezed my hand before going to answer the door. Crystal swept in first, arms full of flowers, lilies and roses, expensive. Brian followed, looking uncomfortable. Crystal's eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "Deborah, I am so sorry." Crystal's voice trembled. She set the flowers on the coffee table and sat down next to me, reaching for my hands. I pulled them away. "I've been sick about what happened at the mall. I know you must have been so scared and confused." Brian sat on my other side. "Mom, Crystal told me everything. I can't believe we thought that would be funny. We were just trying to prank you, you know, like those videos online. We thought you'd laugh about it later." I stared at my son. "You thought leaving me stranded 40 miles from home with no phone and no wallet would be funny?" Brian had the grace to look ashamed. "When you put it like that..." "Mom, I'm really sorry. We messed up." Crystal dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "I brought you a casserole. It's in the car, and I want to make this right. Family is what matters most, you know. We should all be closer." Something in her voice made my skin crawl. The performance was too practiced, too smooth. Margaret offered them coffee. While she was in the kitchen and Brian went to help her, Crystal turned to me. Her tears dried up instantly. "I saw you the other day, downtown, at that big government building." My blood turned to ice. "The lottery office, right?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That must have been exciting." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I think you do." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. $53 million. That's a lot of money for one person, especially when you have family to think about. What do you want, Crystal? She sat back, the sweet expression returning as Brian and Margaret came back with coffee. We'll talk later, just the two of us. They stayed for another agonizing hour. Crystal played the apologetic daughter-in-law perfectly. Brian seemed genuinely remorseful. When they finally left, Margaret turned to me with relief on her face. See? That wasn't so bad. She really does feel terrible. I couldn't tell Margaret what Crystal had said. Not yet. Not until I understood what she was planning. The next day, Crystal called. Meet me at that coffee shop on Main Street. 1 hour. Come alone. I almost didn't go. But I needed to know what she wanted, what she was planning. The coffee shop was crowded with the lunch rush. Crystal had already claimed a corner table, 2 lattes waiting. She'd dressed down, jeans and a sweater, but she still looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Let's not play games, Deborah. She pushed one of the lattes toward me. I know you won the lottery. I know it's 53 million. I know you've set it up in some kind of trust to hide it. How did you? I have my ways. She sipped her latte. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me half. $26.5 million. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out harsh and bitter. You abandoned me, and now you want half my money? You're insane. Her eyes went cold. Think about your grandbaby's future, Deborah. Brian and I don't have grandchildren. Not yet, but we will. And they'll need their grandmother to help support them. She leaned forward. I'm being generous here. I could claim all of it. You're getting older. People might say you're not competent to handle that much money. Is that a threat? It's reality. Her voice was sugar-sweet again, but her eyes were hard. Think about it. Family shares. That's what family does. Unless you want things to get difficult. I'm not giving you a penny. Crystal stood up, gathering her purse. That's disappointing. I really hoped you'd be reasonable. She walked to the door, then turned back. By the way, Brian knows we're having coffee. He thinks it's so sweet that we're bonding. He has no idea about the money yet. But I could tell him. I could tell him that his mother won millions and decided to hide it from her own son. How do you think that would make him feel? She left me sitting there, my coffee going cold. That night, I tried to tell Brian the truth. He came over to Margaret's alone, and I sat him down and explained everything. The mall, the abandonment, Crystal seeing me at the lottery office, her demands for half the money. Brian listened, but his expression grew more and more troubled. Mom, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Crystal told me you might say something like this. What? She said you've been confused lately. She said at the mall. You told her you needed some alone time and wandered off. She searched everywhere for you. She even filed a missing persons report with mall security because she was so worried. That's a lie, Brian. She left me there deliberately. Mom. He took my hands. I love you. But Crystal showed me the report. And the security guard said he remembered her being really upset, crying, searching. She's manipulating you. Or maybe. He looked pained. Mom, you're 63. Dad died 4 years ago, and I know that was hard. Sometimes grief can affect memory. And this thing about the lottery and her demanding money? It sounds a little paranoid. I felt like he'd slapped May. You don't believe May. I believe you believe it. But I think maybe you should see someone, a doctor, just to make sure everything's okay. He left shortly after. I sat in Margaret's spare room and cried for the first time since Tom died. My own son thought I was losing my mind. The next morning, Margaret got a phone call. I could hear Crystal's voice, concerned and caring, through the speaker. I'm so worried about Deborah. She's been making these accusations, talking about lottery money, saying I'm trying to steal from her. Has she seemed confused to you? Margaret's eyes met mine across the room. Well, she has been stressed. I saw her at the lottery office, but when I mentioned it, she denied even being there. And now she's saying I abandoned her, when I have proof I searched for hours. I'm worried she might be showing signs of dementia. My grandmother had it. I know the signs. Margaret's expression changed, became uncertain. She looked at me like she was seeing me differently. After she hung up, she sat me down. Deborah, I need to ask you something. Are you sure about everything that happened? Because Crystal sounded genuinely worried, and she made some good points. Not you too, Margaret. I'm not saying I don't believe you. But what if there's been a misunderstanding? What if your memory of events isn't quite right? I realized what Crystal was doing. She was systematically making everyone around me doubt my sanity. And it was working. Over the next week, it got worse. Crystal called Margaret every few days with new concerns. She sent Brian articles about early-onset dementia. She mentioned to neighbors that she was worried about me. She was building a narrative, brick by careful brick, that I was an unstable old woman who couldn't be trusted. And then came the family meeting. Margaret called me downstairs one Sunday afternoon. I walked into her living room to find Brian, Crystal, Margaret, and a woman I'd never met before. Everyone's faces were grave. "Mom, please sit down." Brian's voice was gentle, like he was talking to a child. "We're all here because we care about you." The stranger introduced herself. "I'm Jennifer Walsh. I live 2 houses down from you. Crystal reached out to me because she's concerned, and I wanted to help." I looked at Crystal. She gave me a sad, sympathetic smile. Brian pulled out a folder. "Mom, we've been documenting some concerning behaviors, getting lost at the mall, making accusations against Crystal, hiding money. Paranoia about people being out to get you. I'm not hiding money, I won it. The lottery money that you say you won but can't prove?" Crystal's voice was so kind, so patient. "Deborah, there's no shame in getting help. My grandmother had dementia. I know how scary it can be." Jennifer spoke up. "I've seen Deborah at the grocery store lately. She did seem confused about where she parked her car. I had to help her find it. I'd never seen this woman before in my life. She was lying, and I knew Crystal had put her up to it." Margaret shifted uncomfortably. "She has seemed a bit forgetful." "This is insane!" I stood up. "You're all believing her lies." "Mom, please." Brian pulled out more papers. "We think you should see a doctor, just a quick evaluation, to make sure everything's okay. And we think it might be good if Crystal and I had temporary power of attorney, just to help you manage things until we know you're okay." I saw the papers. Crystal had them ready, just waiting for my signature. "I'm not signing anything. I'm not crazy, and I'm not sick. Crystal is lying to you. All of you." Crystal's eyes welled with tears. "I know you're scared, Deborah, but we're trying to help you." I refused to sign. I refused to see their doctor. I walked out of that meeting and back to my room, my whole body shaking with rage and fear. Crystal was backing me into a corner, and everyone I loved was helping her do it. That night, Brian called the police. The officers who arrived were professional, but firm. "Your son says you've been making threats, that you're not stable right now." "I haven't threatened anyone." Brian showed them text messages on his phone. Messages that looked like they came from my number, filled with angry, incoherent threats against Crystal. I grabbed his phone, staring at the words. Ugly, vicious things that I would never say. "I didn't send these." "Ma'am, we need you to come with us, just for an evaluation. 72 hours. It's for your own safety." I looked at Brian. He was crying. "Mom, please. Just go. Get the help you need. We all love you." Crystal stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder, her face the picture of concern. And in her eyes, I saw triumph. They took me to Riverside Psychiatric Hospital. The intake process was humiliating. They took my clothes, my few possessions, put me in hospital scrubs. A nurse walked me to a room with 2 beds, concrete walls, a window with bars. I met with Dr. Patterson the next morning. He was in his 50s, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He asked me to tell him what brought me here. I told him everything. The abandonment at the mall, the lottery win, Crystal's manipulation, the fake texts, the setup. As I spoke, I watched his expression. He was listening, nodding, taking notes. but I could see the skepticism growing. Mrs. Harrison, I want to help you, but I need you to understand how this sounds. Your daughter-in-law abandons you as a prank. You win millions in the lottery. She's now orchestrating an elaborate conspiracy to steal your money and have you committed. It's quite a story. It's the truth. Sometimes, when we're under stress, when we've experienced trauma or loss, our minds can create narratives that help us make sense of difficult situations. I'm not making this up. I'm not saying you're lying. I'm saying you believe this is what's happening. But belief and reality aren't always the same thing. On the second day, Crystal and Brian came to visit. They brought Dr. Patterson documents. Medical history, they said. Information about my late husband, Tom. Deborah's husband died of early-onset Alzheimer's, Crystal explained, her voice heavy with sadness. He was only 59. It runs in families, you know. We've been seeing signs in her, too. That's not true. Tom died of a heart attack. Dr. Patterson looked at the papers Crystal had provided. Official-looking medical records. All fabricated. But how could I prove it? Crystal was brilliant. She was educated, well-spoken, perfectly dressed. She had documents. She had witnesses. She had Brian backing up every word. I was a disheveled woman in hospital scrubs, claiming lottery millions and conspiracy theories. On the morning of the third day, Dr. Patterson called me to his office. Mrs. Harrison, I've reviewed everything. I don't find evidence of acute psychosis or danger to yourself or others. I'm going to recommend your release. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. Thank you so much. However, he folded his hands on his desk. I am concerned about your judgment and your ability to manage your affairs independently. I've spoken with your son and daughter-in-law. They're pursuing conservatorship. What? No, they can't do that. They can petition the court. And given the evidence they've presented, I believe a judge will take their concerns seriously. In my professional opinion, you may benefit from having someone help you make major decisions. You're helping them? I'm trying to help you. He seemed genuinely sympathetic. Mrs. Harrison, I see this a lot with older patients. Pride gets in the way of accepting help. There's no shame in it. They released me that afternoon. Brian was waiting in the lobby, but not alone. Crystal stood beside him with a man in an expensive suit. Mom, this is Richard Foster. He's an attorney. We've filed for conservatorship. The hearing is in 2 weeks. Brian, please. I grabbed my son's arm. Please listen to me. She's lying about everything. Your father didn't have Alzheimer's. I'm not sick. She wants my lottery money. The attorney stepped forward, handing me papers. Mrs. Harrison, you're being served with notice of the conservatorship petition. You have the right to contest this in court. Crystal's smile was small and satisfied. Don't worry, Deborah. We'll take good care of you and your assets. Family takes care of family, right? I looked at the papers. They'd frozen my bank accounts, pending the hearing. All of them, including the ones with my lottery winnings. I had no access to my money, no way to fight back. Brian, how could you do this to me? My son looked away, tears in his eyes. I'm doing this because I love you, Mom. They left me standing there in the hospital lobby. I tried to go home, but when I got to my house, the locks had been changed. A note on the door. For your safety, access restricted pending conservatorship hearing. I had nowhere to go. Margaret had stopped returning my calls after Crystal's campaign of concerned phone conversations. I drove to a women's shelter in the city, feeling like my entire life had collapsed around me. The intake worker at Harmony House was named Sandra, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who'd seen it all. She didn't judge, just gave me a bed, a locker, and information about resources. That night, lying on a thin mattress in a room with 6 other women, I realized Crystal had won. She'd isolated me, taken my credibility, frozen my assets, and turned my own son against me. In 2 weeks, a judge would give her legal control over everything, and there wasn't a single thing I could do about it. The shelter became my life. I woke at 6 when the lights came on, ate breakfast in the common room with women who had their own stories of betrayal. and loss. Spent my days trying to figure out how to fight back with no resources and no one who believed me. I found a legal aid office downtown. The receptionist gave me forms to fill out, and eventually, I met with an attorney named Linda Foster. She was young, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and a kind manner. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen. "Mrs. Harrison, I believe you. The problem is, believing you and proving it in court are two different things. So you'll take my case?" She hesitated. "I can try. But I need to be honest. This looks really bad. You have no access to your money, so you can't afford your own expert witnesses. Crystal has legitimate-seeming documentation. She has your son testifying. She's built a compelling narrative that you're an elderly woman who's become unstable and delusional. But it's all lies. Then we need to prove that, and we have 12 days to do it." Linda started investigating. She went to the mall where Crystal abandoned me, looking for security footage. The mall manager apologized. "That footage gets deleted after 30 days. It's been 6 weeks." She went to the convenience store where I bought the lottery ticket. The owner remembered me, vaguely, but couldn't testify to anything useful. She tracked down Jennifer Walsh, the neighbor who'd lied about seeing me confused at the grocery store. Jennifer refused to talk to us, threatened to call the police if we came to her door again. Every lead went nowhere. Crystal had been thorough. Meanwhile, Crystal launched another attack. She created posts on local Facebook groups about her poor mother-in-law struggling with dementia, started a GoFundMe for my medical care. The community rallied around her, praising her devotion. Donations poured in. She was pocketing the money, of course, but she looked like a saint. I tried to tell people my side of the story, approached people at the library, at the grocery store, but I was homeless now, sleeping in a shelter. My clothes were donated items that didn't fit right. I hadn't had a proper haircut in weeks. When I tried to explain about Crystal's manipulation and the lottery millions, people backed away. I sounded exactly like what Crystal claimed I was, a paranoid, delusional old woman. Crystal had the sympathy. I had nothing. 8 days before the hearing, Linda called me to the legal aid office. "Deborah, I'm sorry. I can't represent you anymore." "What? Why?" My managing partners received a call from Crystal's attorney. He's threatening to sue our firm for harassment. Claims we've been stalking his client, making baseless accusations. The partners want me to drop the case. But that's ridiculous. It doesn't matter. They're worried about liability. I'm being pulled off. She looked miserable. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to help you, but I have orders." "Can't you fight it? And lose my job?" "I have student loans, a mortgage. I can't." I walked back to the shelter in a daze. Without an attorney, I had no chance at all. I could represent myself, but I didn't know how. Didn't know the rules, the procedures, the language of the court. I spent the next 3 days trying to prepare. Went to the courthouse law library, reading books about conservatorship proceedings. Filled out forms by hand, my writing shaky. At night, I lay in my shelter bed and tried not to panic. 4 days before the hearing, everything got worse. I was sitting on a bench outside the public library, reviewing my notes, when a security guard approached. "Ma'am, I need to see some ID." I showed him my driver's license, confused. "There's a warrant for your arrest. Violation of a restraining order." "What restraining order?" "The one filed by Crystal Harrison. Says here you've been stalking her, making threats. She saw you outside her house yesterday." "I haven't been anywhere near her house." He called for backup. 2 police officers arrived, and they arrested me there on the sidewalk. People stared as they put me in the back of the patrol car. At the police station, they showed me the restraining order. Crystal had filed it a week ago, claiming I'd been following her, leaving threatening messages, showing up at her workplace. The order stated I had to stay at least 500 feet away from her at all times. Yesterday, she'd reported seeing me parked outside her house. Even had photos. A car that looked like mine, but I'd been at the shelter all day. I had witnesses. Sandra, the intake worker, confirmed I'd been there. But the damage was done. I spent the night in jail. By the time they released me the next morning, charges dropped. I'd missed the deadline to file my response to the conservatorship petition. I went to the courthouse anyway, 3 days before the hearing. Maybe I could file late, explain what happened. But when I gave the clerk my case number, she looked confused. This case was resolved yesterday. What? Your attorney and the petitioners reached a settlement agreement. Judge signed off on it. I don't have an attorney anymore, and I never agreed to any settlement. She showed me the documents. Someone claiming to be my attorney of record had submitted papers agreeing to a temporary conservatorship. Crystal and Brian had submitted emergency documents saying I was in the midst of a mental health crisis, unable to attend hearings or make decisions. They'd even produced a doctor's note. The judge had granted temporary conservatorship. Crystal now had legal control of my assets. The clerk looked at me with pity. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the case is closed. If you want to contest this, you'll need to file a new petition. How long will that take? Months. Maybe a year. And you'd need an attorney. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright autumn sunshine. Crystal had won. She'd outmaneuvered me at every turn. By the time I could fight back legally, she'd have moved all my money offshore where I'd never see it again. I sat on the courthouse steps and let myself cry for the first time in weeks. I didn't go back to the shelter that night. Couldn't face the other women. Couldn't answer their questions. Instead, I walked. My feet carried me through neighborhoods I didn't recognize, past houses where families were sitting down to dinner. Eventually, exhausted, I found a bus stop with a covered bench. I sat down and must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew, a flashlight was shining in my face. Ma'am, you can't sleep here. The police officer looked tired and not unkind. There are shelters. Want me to call someone? It started to rain. Cold November rain that soaked through my jacket in seconds. The officer radioed for a patrol car to take me to Harmony House. But before it arrived, he ran my ID for warrants. His expression changed. There's a restraining order violation here from 2 days ago. I told you, I wasn't anywhere near her. Doesn't matter. You failed to appear in court yesterday for the hearing. Because I was here, filing papers, ask the courthouse. But there was another issue. The photos Crystal had submitted of me outside her house. Close-ups that showed it was definitely me. Except I knew I'd never been there. Someone had followed me, photographed me somewhere else, and edited the background. Or had someone who looked like me pose for photos. I didn't know. But I knew it was fake. The officer didn't care about my explanations. He arrested me again. This time, I spent the night in county jail. In a cell with 3 other women, all of us squeezed onto metal bunks. One of them, a woman around 55 with steel gray hair and intelligent eyes, introduced herself as Teresa. What are you in for? I almost laughed at the question. It's complicated. My daughter-in-law is trying to steal my lottery winnings. Teresa raised an eyebrow. Lottery winnings? I told her the whole story. Expected her to think I was crazy like everyone else. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully. I'm an accountant. Or I was, before my business partner framed me for embezzlement. She leaned against the wall. Here's what I learned. People like your daughter-in-law, they're greedy. They're smart, but greed makes them sloppy. They always make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Paper trails? Money trails. They can't help themselves. They have to brag, have to show off. She looked at me seriously. You said she's already moved fast to get conservatorship. That means she's moving money around. That's dangerous for her. Every transaction leaves a record, every forged signature, every fake document. It all leaves evidence. But I can't access any of that. Not now. But if you get out, if you can find a way to delay things even a little, she'll get cocky. She'll make a mistake. They always do. The next morning, they released me. The restraining order violation charges were dropped when my alibi held up. But I was back at square one. Homeless, broke, and out of options. I went to the public library and used their computer. Started digging into everything I could find about Crystal. Her social media, her background, anything that might give me ammunition. That's when I remembered something. The day of the family meeting at Margaret's house, when everyone was gathered in the living room, confronting me with their concerns. Crystal had been on her laptop. Said she needed the Wi-Fi password to check her email. She'd been in my house, before I'd changed anything, before I'd moved out. My old computer was still there, in the house that now had changed locks. If Crystal had accessed my email that day, if she'd looked through my files, there might be evidence. Browser history, login attempts, something. But I couldn't get into the house. Brian had changed the locks, and I'd be arrested if I tried to break in. I went back to the shelter and found Sandra, the intake worker, told her what I needed. She looked at me for a long moment. Deborah, I've worked here for 8 years. I've seen a lot of women in bad situations. She leaned forward. I believe you. I don't know why, but I do, and I'm going to help you. Sandra had a friend who was a real estate agent, made a call, pulled some strings, found out that my house had been put up for sale by Crystal as my conservator. There was an open house scheduled for tomorrow. Go as a potential buyer, Sandra said. The agent will let you in. Get what you need. The next day, I borrowed clean clothes from another shelter resident, brushed my hair, tried to look presentable, showed up at my own house at 2 p.m, my heart pounding. The real estate agent, a cheerful woman named Patricia, greeted me at the door. Welcome. Let me show you around. It's a great property, priced to sell. I walked through my own home like a stranger, seeing my furniture, my pictures still on the walls, but everything felt violated, wrong. When Patricia got distracted with another potential buyer, I slipped into the spare bedroom where I'd kept my computer desk. The computer was still there. I booted it up, praying the password still worked. It did. My hands shook as I opened the browser history, scrolled back to the day of the family meeting, and there it was. Multiple logins to my email account from this computer, at times when I hadn't been home. Someone had accessed my personal email, my bank account, my correspondence with financial advisors. I plugged in the USB drive Sandra had given me, started downloading everything. Screenshots of the browser history, the login times, the pages accessed. Then, I checked my email spam folder, something I hadn't done in weeks. Found dozens of emails from the Lottery Commission, from Patricia, my financial advisor, from the bank, all marked as spam, which meant I'd never seen them. Someone had been intercepting my correspondence, marking important emails as spam so I wouldn't see them. I found emails from Crystal to lottery officials, claiming she was my representative, trying to claim the ticket directly. The Lottery Commission had denied her because she wasn't the ticket holder. That's why she'd needed conservatorship. It was the only legal way to access the money. I downloaded it all. Every piece of evidence. Patricia called from the hallway. The open house is closing up. I shut down the computer, pocketed the USB drive, and left. Walked out of my own house one more time, but this time with hope. I took the USB drive to Linda Foster's office, burst in without an appointment. Linda's receptionist tried to stop me, but Linda heard the commotion and came out. I found evidence. Real evidence. We went into her office. I plugged in the USB drive and showed her everything. The browser history, the intercepted emails, the attempted claim on the lottery ticket. Linda's expression changed as she reviewed it all. This is good. This proves she was accessing your private information before she had legal authority. This proves she was trying to steal the lottery money directly. Can you help me now? She looked torn. My partners. Then don't tell them. I grabbed her hand. Linda, please. I have evidence now. We can prove fraud. Forgery. Identity theft. This is bigger than a conservatorship case. This is criminal. She looked at the screen again. Let me make some calls. Over the next 2 days, Linda worked quietly. Filed emergency motions under her name personally, not through the firm. She found a sympathetic judge, one who agreed to review the new evidence. We had an emergency hearing scheduled for 48 hours from now. I spent those 2 days gathering more evidence. Went to the convenience store and got a sworn statement from the owner that I'd bought the lottery ticket. Found a patient advocate at my doctor's office who pulled my medical records showing Tom had died of a heart attack, not Alzheimer's. Got statements from shelter residents about my mental state and behavior. Teresa, my cellmate from jail, was released. She'd been an accountant before her troubles, and she agreed to review Crystal's financial documentation, looking for inconsistencies. She found them. Numbers that didn't add up. Dates that were wrong. Signatures that didn't match. For the first time in weeks, I let myself hope. The morning of the emergency hearing, I woke early. Sandra helped me find decent clothes, helped me look presentable. "This is it," she said. "You're going to get your life back." I arrived at the courthouse 2 hours early, went to the filing office to make sure all my documents were properly submitted. The clerk pulled up my case, looked confused. "Ma'am, this hearing was resolved yesterday afternoon." No, that's impossible." A settlement was reached. The parties came to an agreement. Judge approved it. My legs went weak. What agreement? Emergency order granting full conservatorship to Crystal Harrison, signed by all parties, including your attorney of record. Linda didn't. I started, then stopped. Someone had forged more documents, claimed to be my attorney, submitted false papers saying we'd agreed to settle. By the time I could prove it was fraud, by the time we could get another hearing, Crystal would have moved all the money. It would be gone, untraceable. I walked out of the courthouse into the cold November morning. I'd lost. Despite the evidence, despite everything, Crystal had won. I walked for hours after leaving the courthouse. Ended up at a park by the river, sitting on a bench and watching the gray water flow past. Everything I'd tried had failed. Every move I'd made, Crystal had countered. She was always 3 steps ahead. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. "Deborah?" It was Linda. "Don't go back to the shelter. Crystal filed an emergency petition to have you placed in long-term psychiatric care. There's a court order. Police are looking for you." "What?" "She's moving fast now. She transferred the lottery funds yesterday. Most of it went to offshore accounts. She put your house on the market. She found a state facility that will take you." "For how long?" "Indefinitely. Until you're deemed mentally competent." "Which, with her as your conservator controlling who evaluates you?" She trailed off. "I'm so sorry. I tried to stop it. But she has all the legal authority now." I hung up, sat there watching the river, and thought about just walking into it, letting the cold water carry me away. Tom was gone. Brian had chosen Crystal over me. I had no money, no home, no hope. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. A photo, Crystal and Brian, standing in front of a mansion. A real estate sign in the yard. The text read, "New house, $3 million. Thanks for the down payment, Mom." Something inside me broke, not in the way Crystal wanted, but in a way that burned away the despair and left only rage. I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to let her win. I called Linda back. "I need you to buy me time. File motions, request continuances, anything to slow down the placement order." "Deborah, I can't. Please, just give me a week." "I'll try. But I can't promise anything." I went to Margaret's house. Hadn't seen my sister in weeks. She answered the door looking shocked at my appearance. I must have looked terrible. Thin, exhausted, my clothes hanging off me. "Margaret, I need you to listen to me. Really listen." She let me in. I sat at her kitchen table and showed her everything on the USB drive. The browser history. The intercepted emails. Crystal's attempts to claim the lottery ticket. The financial inconsistencies. Margaret's face went pale as she reviewed it all. "Oh my God! Deborah, I'm so sorry," I thought. "Crystal was so convincing, and you seemed so confused. She's a con artist, a brilliant one, but she made mistakes. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to prove it. All of it. And I'm going to get my son back. Margaret grabbed my hands. What do you need from me? Testify. Tell the truth about what Crystal said to you, how she manipulated you. Tell them you were wrong. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll do it, whatever you need. Over the next 3 days, I built my case. Linda managed to delay the psychiatric placement by claiming improper documentation. It bought us 4 more days. I tracked down Jennifer Walsh, the neighbor who'd lied about me being confused. Knocked on her door with Margaret beside me. Jennifer, I need the truth. Did Crystal pay you to lie about me? Jennifer looked scared. I could get in trouble. You're already in trouble. This is going to court. You could go to jail for perjury. She broke down. Yes. She paid me $1,000 to say I saw you acting confused. She said it was to help you, that you needed treatment but were refusing it. Will you testify to that? She hesitated, then nodded. I'm sorry. I needed the money, but I can't lie in court. Teresa came through with a detailed analysis of Crystal's financial documents. Every inconsistency, every forged signature, every suspicious transaction. She'd found evidence that Crystal had been planning this for months, long before the lottery win. The pieces were coming together. I finally confronted Brian. Showed up at his office, walked past the receptionist before she could stop me. Brian looked shocked to see me. Mom, you shouldn't be here. Crystal has a restraining order. Your wife is a con artist. She's been planning to steal from me for months, and she's manipulated you into helping her. I put the USB drive on his desk. This is proof. Everything she's done, every lie she's told. Look at it, please. Brian stared at the drive but didn't touch it. Mom, you need help. You're not well. I showed him the medical records. Your father died of a heart attack, not Alzheimer's. Crystal lied about that. She lied about everything. For just a moment, doubt flickered across his face. But then his phone rang. Crystal's name on the screen. I have to take this. Brian, please. Just look at the evidence. He picked up the phone. Hey, babe. Yeah, she's here. No, I'm okay. I'll be home soon. He hung up and looked at me with something like pity. Mom, I love you. But you're making this harder than it needs to be. Crystal is trying to help you. Why can't you see that? Because it's not true. I was almost shouting now. Brian, she's stealing millions of dollars from me. She abandoned me at a mall. She's the one who needs help, not me. His expression hardened. You need to leave. Just look at the evidence. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking. He stood up, came around the desk. I'm calling security. I left the USB drive on his desk and walked out. Either he'd look at it or he wouldn't, but I'd tried. That evening, I got a text from Crystal's number. Just 2 words and a photo. Too late. The photo showed a bank statement. 0 balance. She'd moved all the money. Another text came through. By the way, I'm pregnant. Brian is so excited. You're going to be a grandmother. Too bad you won't be around to meet the baby. Your transfer to the state facility is scheduled for tomorrow morning. I sat in Margaret's spare room and faced the truth. I'd lost. Crystal had the money, had Brian, had beaten me at every turn. Then my phone rang. Linda. Deborah, something's happened. Brian just called me. He looked at the USB drive. He wants to talk. I met Brian at a coffee shop near Margaret's house. He looked terrible. Eyes red, hands shaking. Is it all true? Is everything on that drive real? Every word. He put his head in his hands. How could I have been so stupid? She played me. She played all of us. Brian, we can still fix this. We can stop her. He looked up at me. There's something else. I went home to confront her about the drive. She wasn't there, but her laptop was open. I looked through it. Mom, she's not pregnant. She never was. She just said that to make sure I'd stay on her side. What else did you find? Emails. Plans. She's been running cons for years. I'm not the first husband she scammed. There are others. She marries men, gets access to their family money, divorces them, and moves on. She paused. Your wife, your mother, your sister, whoever has money. How long have you known her? 2 years. Met her online. She seemed perfect. He laughed bitterly. Because she's done this before. She's a professional. We have 24 hours before they move me to that facility. Can you testify against her? He nodded. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have believed you. We worked through the night. Brian, Linda, Margaret, Teresa, Jennifer, me, building an ironclad case. Every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every document. By morning, we were ready. Linda filed emergency motions at 8 in the morning. Request for immediate hearing based on new evidence of fraud and abuse. Request to freeze all accounts. Request to void the conservatorship. The judge who reviewed it was Patricia Henderson, the same judge who'd granted the conservatorship in the first place. She looked over our evidence package, 2 inches thick, and her expression grew darker with every page. Emergency hearing scheduled for 2 o'clock today. We had 6 hours. I showered at Margaret's, dressed in the best clothes we could find. Margaret did my hair, helped me with makeup. You look strong, she said. You look like someone who's been through hell and came out the other side. At 1:30, we walked into the courthouse together. Linda, Margaret, Teresa, Jennifer, and Brian, my family. The real family I'd built through this nightmare. Crystal arrived at 1:45. She looked perfect, as always. Designer dress, perfect hair, and makeup. Walked in with her attorney like she owned the place. Saw me and smiled. Then she saw Brian standing with me. Her smile faltered. Her attorney approached Linda. What's this about? We had an agreement. That agreement was obtained through fraud. We have evidence. We filed into the courtroom. Judge Henderson presided, her expression stern. This is an emergency hearing on the matter of the conservatorship of Deborah Harrison. I've reviewed the motion and the evidence submitted. This is very serious. Crystal's attorney stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Harrison has been diagnosed with dementia. She's confused and making false accusations against my client, who has only tried to help her. Judge Henderson looked at him. Sit down. Then she turned to Linda. Counselor Foster, present your evidence. Linda stood. Your Honor, we have evidence of systematic fraud, forgery, identity theft, and financial exploitation. She pulled up the documents on the courtroom screen. Computer forensics showing unauthorized access to Mrs. Harrison's accounts. Intercepted emails. Forged signatures. Crystal's face went pale. Linda continued. We have testimony from multiple witnesses that they were paid or coerced into making false statements about Mrs. Harrison's mental state. We have evidence that Mrs. Harrison's daughter-in-law, Crystal Harrison, has been planning this exploitation for months, beginning before the lottery win that is at the center of this case. The lottery win that Crystal claims doesn't exist, her attorney said weakly. Linda smiled. It exists. $53 million. Won on a ticket purchased with a $10 bill that Crystal Harrison gave Mrs. Harrison. After abandoning her at a shopping mall 40 miles from home, she pulled up the lottery commission documentation, verified by the state lottery office. Mrs. Harrison set it up in a trust to protect her privacy. Crystal discovered this and began a systematic campaign to gain control of those funds through conservatorship. Judge Henderson leaned forward. Do you have the ticket? I do, Your Honor. I pulled it from my wallet. The actual ticket in a protective sleeve, along with verification from the Lottery Commission and security footage from the convenience store showing my purchase. The judge examined everything. Then she looked at Crystal. Mrs. Harrison, do you have anything to say? Crystal stood, composed herself. Your Honor, I admit the approach may have seemed extreme, but I was genuinely concerned for my mother-in-law's well-being. The lottery money is real, but I believed she wasn't capable of managing it properly. Then why did you try to claim the ticket yourself before the conservatorship? Linda pulled up the emails. Why did you forge documents? Why did you pay witnesses to lie? Why did you transfer funds to offshore accounts? Crystal's mask finally cracked. Those accounts were for her protection. She would have wasted the money. On what? Living her life? Judge Henderson's voice was ice. You transferred $28 million to accounts in your name. That's not protection. That's theft. Brian stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to testify. The judge nodded. Proceed. My mother told me the truth from the beginning. I didn't believe her. My wife, Crystal, manipulated me into thinking my mother was mentally ill. She showed me false documents, arranged for fake witnesses, convinced me that conservatorship was the only way to help. Brian's voice broke. I was wrong. My mother is completely competent. She's one of the strongest people I know. And I failed her. Crystal turned to him. Brian, baby, you don't understand. Don't. He stepped away from her. I looked through your laptop. I found emails to 3 other men you've scammed. You've done this before. You targeted my mother because she won the lottery, but you were already planning to drain my trust fund that I inherited from my father. This is what you do. Judge Henderson banged her gavel. I've heard enough. She looked at Crystal with disgust. Mrs. Harrison, I'm voiding the conservatorship immediately, effective now. I'm also issuing an order for your arrest on charges of fraud, forgery, elder abuse, identity theft, and wire fraud. The funds you transferred will be frozen and returned to Mrs. Deborah Harrison. Crystal's attorney tried to object, but the judge wasn't having it. Bailiff, take her into custody. 2 bailiffs approached Crystal. She looked at Brian one last time. You're making a mistake. No, he said quietly. Marrying you was the mistake. They led her away in handcuffs. In the courtroom, surrounded by the people who'd stood by me, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The aftermath took time. 3 months of legal proceedings while Crystal sat in jail, bail denied because she was a flight risk. The offshore accounts were frozen, and the money returned to my control. My house was taken off the market. The conservatorship was formally dissolved. Crystal was eventually sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Fraud, forgery, elder abuse, identity theft, wire fraud. The judge made an example of her. Brian moved back in with me while he processed everything. Our relationship was damaged, maybe permanently, but we were working on it. Therapy, honest conversations, rebuilding trust, brick by brick. I gave Margaret a check for $100,000 and helped her buy a small house near mine. She'd stood by me in the end, and family takes care of family. Teresa got her accounting license reinstated, and I hired her as my personal financial advisor. She invested my money wisely, helped me set up a foundation for elder abuse victims. I donated $5 million to Harmony House and other women's shelters. Sandra got a significant raise and a scholarship fund named after her. Jennifer, the neighbor who'd lied for Crystal, testified at the trial. I didn't press charges against her. She'd been desperate, and Crystal had exploited that. Instead, I paid off her credit card debt and got her connected with job training programs. Linda Foster quit her law firm and started her own practice specializing in elder law. I was her first client and biggest supporter. 6 months after the trial, I stood at a podium in the state capitol building. The Attorney General had asked me to speak at a press conference about elder abuse and financial exploitation. I told my story, all of it. The abandonment, the lottery win, Crystal's manipulation, the months of fighting back. Local news covered it. Then national news picked it up. My face was everywhere. The grandmother who'd been abandoned with $10 and turned it into $53 million in justice. People reached out from across the country. Other victims of similar scams. Other families torn apart by greed. I used my foundation to help them. Legal aid, financial counseling, support groups. 1 year after that terrible day at the mall, I stood in my kitchen making coffee and thought about everything that had happened. The $10 bill Crystal had given me, thinking she was being so clever, so cruel. That money had bought a lottery ticket. That ticket had bought my freedom. Sometimes God uses the smallest things to deliver the biggest justice. Brian came into the kitchen, poured himself coffee. We'd found a new normal. Not the relationship we'd had before, but maybe something more honest. He'd learned hard lessons about trust and manipulation. I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. We sat at the table together, comfortable silence between us. "You know," he said finally, "I've been thinking about what you said at the press conference, about how sometimes our lowest moments contain the seeds of our greatest triumphs." I nodded. "It's true. If Crystal hadn't abandoned me, I never would have bought that ticket, never would have won, never would have discovered what she really was before she destroyed even more lives." Brian smiled sadly. "I guess I should thank her for being so awful that even I finally saw through it." We laughed, and it felt good. My phone buzzed. A message from the foundation. Another woman needed help, another family torn apart by financial abuse. I responded immediately, setting up resources, connecting her with attorneys and counselors. This was my purpose now, taking the worst thing that had ever happened to me and turning it into something that helped others. Crystal had thought that $10 bill was a joke, a final insult, a way to humiliate me. She had no idea it would be the down payment on her prison sentence. The shrew got exactly the surprise she deserved. If you've ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted, if you've ever been manipulated or gaslit or made to feel crazy when you were telling the truth, I want you to know something. You're not alone. Your story matters. Your truth matters. And sometimes justice takes time, but it comes. Have you or someone you love ever experienced financial exploitation or elder abuse? What would you have done in my situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to hear more stories about resilience, justice, and triumph over adversity. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they can fight back and win. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it brings you strength, hope, and the knowledge that no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way forward. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and never let anyone make you doubt your own truth. God bless you all.